They say grief comes in waves. What they don't tell you is that sometimes those waves crash into you while you're standing in your childhood kitchen, staring at a half-empty coffee mug your father will never drink from again. I'm Emily Chen, 35, and 2 weeks ago, I lost both my parents in a car accident. Mom and Dad were driving home from their weekly date night when a drunk driver ran a red light. They died instantly, or so the police told me. I'm still not sure if that makes it better or worse. The house feels different now. Every creak of the floorboards, every tick of the grandfather clock in the hallway serves as a reminder that I'm alone here. Well, not entirely alone. I moved back in 6 months ago when Dad's Parkinson's started getting worse. Mom needed help, and being a freelance graphic designer meant I could work from anywhere. My older brother Michael hadn't exactly volunteered, too busy with his real estate empire in the city. You should stay with them, he'd said during one of our rare phone calls. You're single? No kids. It makes sense. The way he emphasized single made it sound like a character flaw rather than a choice. But I'd learned long ago that arguing with Michael was like trying to nail Jell-O to a wall, messy and pointless. So I moved back to the suburbs, into my old bedroom that still had glow-in-the-dark stars on the ceiling. Mom had kept it exactly as I'd left it after college, right down to the Taylor Swift posters and the corkboard filled with high school memories. During those 6 months, I watched Dad's hands shake more with each passing week, helped Mom with the cooking and cleaning, and tried to memorize every detail of their faces, every story they told, every laugh we shared. I didn't know I was creating my last memories with them. The sound of tires on gravel snapped me out of my thoughts. Through the kitchen window, I watched Michael's black Mercedes pull into the driveway, the morning sun glinting off its pristine surface. He'd been surprisingly absent since the funeral, claiming he was handling the paperwork and dealing with the estate. Whatever that meant. The front door opened without a knock. Michael never knocked, not even when we were kids. He walked into the kitchen like he owned it, his expensive suit a stark contrast to my worn jeans and Dad's old Northwestern sweatshirt that I couldn't bring myself to wash because it still smelled like him. Emily, he nodded, setting his leather briefcase on the counter. We need to talk. Something in his tone made my stomach clench. I'd heard that tone before, usually right before he announced something that would upend my life. Like when he told me he'd borrowed my college fund to start his business, promising to pay it back with interest. I'm still waiting. What's wrong? I asked, wrapping my hands around my coffee mug, seeking comfort in its warmth. Michael pulled out a chair but didn't sit. Instead, he leaned forward, his hands gripping the backrest. I've been going through Dad's will and other documents, he began, his voice carefully neutral. There are some things we need to discuss about the house. What about it? Dad left it to me. The words hung in the air between us, heavy and sharp. I stared at him, waiting for the punchline that never came. That's impossible, I finally managed. Dad would have told me. I've been living here, taking care of them. Which we're all grateful for, Michael cut in smoothly. But the fact remains, the house is legally mine now, and I think it's time we discussed your living arrangements. The meaning behind his words hit me like a physical blow. You want me to move out? I'm planning to sell the house, he continued as if I hadn't spoken. The market's hot right now, and this neighborhood has really come up in value. The property could easily fetch 7 figures. I felt the room spin slightly. The house had been in our family for 3 generations. Grandpa Chen had bought it in the 1960s when few Chinese families could get mortgages in suburban neighborhoods. Dad had grown up here, and so had we. Every wall held memories, every room echoed with our family's history. You can't sell it, I whispered. This is our home. Michael's expression hardened. It's an asset, Emily, and as the executor of the estate, it's my responsibility to manage it properly. Show me the will, I demanded, standing up so quickly my chair scraped against the floor. He opened his briefcase and pulled out a document, sliding it across the table. I snatched it up, scanning the pages with trembling hands. There it was, in black and white. To my son, Michael Chen, I leave my primary residence. This doesn't make sense, I muttered, reading and rereading the paragraph. Dad would never. He knew I would make the smart financial decision. Michael said, straightening his tie. Unlike some people, I understand the value of property in today's market. The implied criticism stung, but I was too shocked to respond. My eyes kept going back to the date on the will, March 15th, 2024. Just 2 months ago. Dad could barely hold a pen in March, I said slowly, pieces starting to click together. His tremors were so bad he couldn't even sign his name most days. Something flickered across Michael's face. Concern? Fear? But it was gone so quickly I might have imagined it. The will is properly witnessed and notarized, he said firmly. Now, I'm willing to be reasonable about this. I'll give you 60 days to find a new place. No. The word came out stronger than I expected. Michael blinked, clearly not used to being contradicted. Excuse me? I said no, I'm not leaving and you're not selling this house. Michael's carefully maintained composure cracked. This isn't a negotiation, Emily. The house is mine legally. If you force me to, I'll have my lawyers. Your lawyers? I laughed, but there was no humor in it. You mean the ones Dad paid for when you were starting out? The ones who helped you set up your first property deal? Don't be bitter, it's not attractive. Michael sneered. Just because you chose to waste your potential on artistic pursuits doesn't mean. Get out. You can't throw me out of my own house. Watch me. I walked to the front door and held it open. And Michael, don't come back without the real will. He gathered his briefcase, his movements sharp with anger. You're making a mistake, Emily. A big one. I'll give you a week to reconsider before I involve my lawyers. After he left, I sank to the floor, my back against the door. The house seemed to close in around me, every surface holding memories that suddenly felt threatened. Mom and Dad couldn't be gone just for their home to be sold off like any other property on Michael's books. There had to be something I was missing. I spent the next 3 days going through every drawer, every file cabinet, every box in the attic. Dad had always been meticulously organized, keeping everything from old tax returns to childhood report cards carefully labeled and filed. But I couldn't find another copy of the will. What I did find, tucked away in Dad's study desk, was his journal. The last entry was dated just a week before the accident. Michael came by today, pushing about the will again. I told him no. This house stays in the family, stays with Emily. She's the one who understands what that means. I've made arrangements. E will know where to look. My heart raced as I read the words over and over. E will know where to look. Dad was trying to tell me something, but what? I closed my eyes, thinking back to all the times Dad had shared family stories with me during those last months. He'd been especially nostalgic, showing me old photos, telling me about Grandpa Chen's struggles and triumphs. One story kept coming back to me, about how Grandpa had built a hidden safe behind the fireplace when he first bought the house, worried that banks wouldn't protect a Chinese family savings back then. Always good to have a backup plan, Dad had said, giving me that knowing look I never quite understood. Until now. I rushed to the living room, my heart pounding. The fireplace was original to the house, its brick facade unchanged since the 1960s. I ran my hands over the rough surface, pressing and prodding until, there. A slight give in one of the bricks, almost imperceptible unless you knew what you were looking for. The hidden panel swung open with a soft click, revealing a small safe I'd never known existed. My hands shook as I input the combination. My birthday, just like Dad used for everything important. The door opened with a quiet creak. Inside was a manila envelope, sealed and labeled in Dad's shaky handwriting. The Real Will 2024. I opened it carefully, my breath catching as I read the contents. This one was different from the one Michael had shown me. Very different. Not only did it leave the house to me, but it also contained something else. Documented proof that Michael had been embezzling from Dad's accounts for years, using forged signatures to transfer hundreds of thousands of dollars to his real estate ventures. Oh, Michael, I whispered, understanding dawning. What have you done? The house phone rang, making me jump. Michael's number flashed on the caller ID. Changed your mind yet? He asked without preamble when I answered. My lawyers are drawing up the eviction papers as we speak. I thought about the documents in my hands, about Dad's last message to me, about everything Michael had taken from our family over the years. Actually, I said, my voice steady. I think we need to have another talk. And this time, Michael, you might want to bring those lawyers of yours. They're going to want to see what I found in Dad's safe. The silence on the other end of the line was deafening. Part 2. The next 48 hours passed in a blur of activity. I scanned every document from the safe, made multiple copies, and stored them in different locations. Years of dealing with Michael had taught me to always have backups. I also called Sarah Martinez, Dad's longtime attorney who had mysteriously retired right around the time the suspicious will appeared. "I've been waiting for your call," she said when I explained what I found. Her voice carried a mix of relief and resignation. "Your father contacted me in February, worried about some irregularities in his accounts. When I started looking into it," she paused. "Let's just say your brother made it very clear what would happen to my law license if I didn't cooperate. He threatened you?" "Blackmail is such an ugly word," Sarah replied dryly. "But yes, he fabricated evidence suggesting I had mishandled client funds. Said he'd report me to the Bar Association unless I stepped aside and let his new attorneys handle everything." My hands clenched around the phone. "Will you help me now?" "Emily, I've kept detailed records of everything, including recordings of Michael's threats. I may be retired, but I still know how to protect myself and my clients." By the time Michael arrived at the house the next morning, I was ready. He brought 2 attorneys with him, both young men in expensive suits who looked like they'd stepped out of a corporate law firm catalog. I had Sarah Martinez sitting beside me at the dining room table, her silver hair pulled back in a neat bun, her expression pleasantly neutral. Michael faltered slightly when he saw her but recovered quickly. "Sarah," he nodded. "I thought you retired." "Oh, I have," she smiled, the expression not reaching her eyes. "I'm just here as a family friend. Supporting Emily, you know." They sat down, Michael's lawyers arranging their papers with practiced efficiency. "We have the eviction notices prepared," one of them began, but I cut him off. "Before we start," I said, sliding a folder across the table, "you might want to look at these." Michael didn't move to take the folder, but one of his lawyers opened it. I watched their faces as they read, the younger one's eyes widening, the older one's lips pressing into a thin line. Michael's complexion turned ashen as they whispered to him. "Where did you get these?" he demanded, his voice hoarse. "Dad's safe, the one Grandpa built. The one you never knew about because you were too busy making money to listen to family stories." I leaned forward. "It's all there, Michael. Every forged signature, every unauthorized transfer, every cent you stole from our father while he was dying." "I didn't steal anything," he snapped. "I was investing in our family's future. Dad didn't understand modern business. Dad understood exactly what you were doing." I cut in. He just couldn't believe his own son would betray him like this. "Want to know what else is in that folder?" "The real will, the one that leaves the house to me and explicitly states that if you contest it, all evidence of your fraud goes straight to the FBI." The silence that followed was absolute. Even the grandfather clock in the hall seemed to hold its breath. "Mr. Chin," the older lawyer said quietly, "I suggest we take a brief recess to discuss." "There's nothing to discuss." Michael stood up so abruptly his chair toppled backward. "This is blackmail." Sarah spoke for the first time, her voice gentle but firm. "No, Michael. This is accountability, something you've managed to avoid for far too long." He turned to his lawyers. "She can't do this. There must be some way to—" "Sit down, Michael." My voice cut through his rising panic. "We're not finished." Surprisingly, he sat. Maybe he saw something in my expression, some echo of Dad's authority that even he couldn't ignore. "Here's what's going to happen." I continued, pulling out another document. "This is a new agreement drawn up by Sarah before her retirement. You're going to sign over any claim to the house. You're going to repay every cent you took from Dad's accounts with interest. And you're going to do it quietly, without involving lawyers or courts. And if I refuse—" I smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "Then every bank you do business with, every investor in your properties, every client you've ever had will receive copies of these documents. How long do you think your real estate empire will last when people learn you built it with stolen money?" Michael's facade cracked. For a moment, I saw the scared little boy he must have been before greed and ambition twisted him into the man sitting across from me. "You destroy me? Your own brother? Like you tried to destroy me, steal my home, erase our family's history." I shook my head. "I'm not destroying you, Michael. I'm giving you a chance to make things right. More than you deserve, really." His lawyers huddled with him in a corner of the room, their whispered conversation intense. Sarah squeezed my hand under the table. Finally, Michael returned to his seat. "I'll sign," he said, his voice hollow. "But I want something in return." "You're not really in a position to negotiate. Just don't tell Mom's family. Please, they don't need to know about any of this." The request surprised me. Michael had never seemed to care much about our mother's relatives, rarely attending family gatherings on that side, but looking at him now, I saw something I hadn't expected: shame. "Fine," I agreed. "As long as you honor every part of this agreement, what happened here stays between us." The next hour was spent signing papers, transferring accounts, making arrangements for repayment. When it was done, Michael stood to leave, his shoulders slumped in defeat. "Emily," he paused at the door. I convinced myself I deserved it all, that I was smarter, worked harder, knew better than everyone else. I didn't think about family. I finished for him. About trust. About the fact that success doesn't mean anything if you destroy everyone who loves you to get it. He nodded, unable to meet my eyes. "Goodbye, Michael." After they left, Sarah helped me pack up the documents. "Your father would be proud," she said softly. "He always said you were the one who truly understood what family means." I looked around the living room, at the photos on the wall spanning 3 generations of Chens. Mom and Dad on their wedding day, Grandpa Chen standing proudly in front of the house. Michael and me as children, before money and ambition drove us apart. "What happens now?" I asked, subtly feeling very tired. Sarah smiled. "Now, my dear, you live. You honor your parents' memory. You make this house a home again." That was 6 months ago. The house feels different now, but in a good way. I've repainted some rooms, planted a garden like Mom always wanted, started hosting weekly dinners for Mom's family, keeping my promise not to tell them about Michael, but making sure our family bonds stay strong. Michael keeps his distance, though he's been making the repayment transfers on schedule. Sometimes I see his car drive slowly past the house. But he never stops. Maybe someday we'll find a way to be family again. But for now, this distance feels right. Last week, I was cleaning out Dad's study and found another entry in his journal, one I'd missed before. It was dated just days before the accident. "Washed Emily in the garden today. Planting those roses Ming always wanted. She thinks I'm napping, but I see her. See how she loves this place, understands what it means. Michael wants to know where the new will is. Keeps asking about the house. But I've made sure Emily will find what she needs when the time comes. My daughter is stronger than she knows. Just like her grandfather, she'll protect what matters." I closed the journal, tears blurring my vision. Outside, the roses Mom never got to see were starting to bloom. In the hallway, Grandpa Chen's clock chimed the hour, its sound echoing through the house that 3 generations of my family had called home. Some people say a house is just wood and brick, just an asset on a balance sheet. But they're wrong. A home is built from memories, from love, from the stories passed down through generations. And sometimes, if we're lucky, it becomes a fortress protecting not just our possessions, but our family's legacy. I'm Emily Chen, and this is my home. Not because a will says so, but because 3 generations of my family lived and loved here. Because my father trusted me to protect it. Because even when the walls echo with loss, they also whisper of hope, of continuity, of belonging. And no amount of money in the world can buy that.